Hello, my karmically connected friend. Have you ever experienced this moment? It's just a message marked seen with no reply from the other person. Yet that silence carries an invisible weight that suddenly makes your cheerful day heavy. Or sometimes, it's just a fleeting, slightly cold glance, a casual remark, or a tiny change in a planned schedule. Rationally, they aren't big deals. No major catastrophe, no sky falling or earth shaking. But strangely, inside your chest tightens, a vague unease creeps in and invades your mind. You keep replaying that moment, agonizing and wondering why this trivial matter bothers you so much, why a small grain of sand causes you such pain. These are the sensitive hidden corners of life that we rarely have the courage to talk about. It's not the big storms out there, but these subtle disturbances that are silently eroding your peace every day. My dear friend, if we dare to look deeply into those moments, we will realize that discomfort is never random. That is when the mind is trying to send you an urgent signal. A person replying slowly, a small change in tone, or a plan going off track. All those subtle disturbances actually do not speak to the nature of the external event. Instead, they act like transparent windows, exposing exactly the lens through which you view life. The problem lies not in the event that occurred, but entirely in how your consciousness is receiving and interpreting it. Imagine the emotional reactions rising within you like fierce waves. It could be anger, fear, or the feeling of wanting to bristle in defense because you believe life is against you. But try stopping and asking yourself a key question. What would happen if that suffocating pressure did not come from the outside world at all? Let's consider a small story that perhaps all of us have experienced. Suppose you receive a short message from your boss saying, "Meet me for a bit." Immediately, your heart beats faster. A dark scenario starts running in your head. You wonder what you did wrong, whether you will be reprimanded. You step into the meeting room with a tense and defensive mindset. Yet the truth is, they just wanted to thank you for a recently completed project, or simply ask for a small piece of information. Where did all that previous anxiety and misery come from? It didn't come from that message. It came from a concept Buddhism calls avidya, or ignorance. Ignorance here doesn't mean a lack of knowledge or low intelligence. It means blindness in perception, the fact that we do not see things as they truly are. We are looking at life through a thick veil. Thoughts like, "They are judging me," or "They don't respect me," actually do not come from the present moment. They are echoes of old experiences, old fears, and the ego yearning for protection. We suffer not because of what actually happens, but because of the story we weave around that event ourselves. We are living behind a veil, fighting shadows created by our own minds instead of facing reality. To lift the veil of ignorance obscuring our vision, we need to recognize three great marks always present in every moment of life. Imagine this life as an endless river, and these three marks are the very nature of that water flow. The first mark is Anicca, or impermanence. Rationally, we all know that everything will change. But deep in the subconscious, we live and act as if everything must stay still forever. We expect loved ones to keep their personalities unchanged from day one, our emotions to always be stable, and our status to always be solid. Therefore, when the river of life shifts course even slightly, like a friend suddenly becoming distant or health fluctuating a bit, we immediately panic. We think something terrible and wrong has happened. But my dear friend, the truth is nothing is wrong. The river must flow, water must move. When things change, they are simply following their own natural laws. The second mark is dukkha, or suffering. Suffering here is not just physical pain, but deep dissatisfaction when we try to grasp things that cannot be grasped. Try imagining you are standing in the middle of a river, trying to use your bare hands to grasp the flowing water. The tighter you squeeze, the faster the water flows away. In life, we cling to praise, relationships, or a perfect image of ourselves. We want the river to freeze according to our will. Suffering arises precisely when the rigidity of expectation collides with the softness but unpredictability of reality. Life is soft and flowing, while our mind is hard and clinging. That friction creates the wound. And the final mark, also the deepest door to liberation, is anatta, or non-self. We often believe there is a solid, unchanging self inside, like a rock lying in the middle of the river, enduring all the impacts of the current. But the Buddha taught that that self is not the rock. That self is the river. It is a continuous flow of sensations, thoughts, memories, and roles changing every second, every minute. There is no single experience or emotion that stands still long enough for you to call it a fixed I. When you forget this non-self, you turn yourself into a rock. Every criticism, every unkind look crashes into that rock of ego and causes pain. But when you clearly see non-self, you become the water. If someone throws a criticism at you, it is like throwing a branch into the water. The water simply parts, receives, then rejoins and continues to flow without being hurt. Life remains the same, but the thing inside you that gets offended and shaken is no longer as rigid as before. When we are swept into an emotional storm, whether anger or self-pity, we often feel it hits immediately like a switch just flipped. We think it is a single event. But in reality, under the light of awakening, it is an entire chain of reactions closely linked together. If you don't see this chain, you will remain a slave to the habit of reacting. Let's dissect a very ordinary situation to see this clearly. Suppose you arrange to meet a close friend for coffee. You have been there for 30 minutes, but that person has not appeared, and their phone does not ring. The first link is the event. The friend is late and unreachable. This is the objective reality. Immediately, the second link appears, which is sensation. Before you can think, your body has already reacted. Perhaps you feel a slight tightness in your chest, heat rising to your face, or your breath becoming shorter and more rapid. From those uncomfortable sensations, the third link is thought, beginning to rise to explain the feeling. Your mind whispers that they are disrespectful to you or you are not important to them. Next is the fourth link, reinforcing thought, or belief. The hurt ego starts speaking up more strongly that it needs to protect its self-esteem, that it cannot let others treat it this way. And then leading to the fifth link is the impulse to act. You feel like getting up and leaving immediately, or preparing harsh words of blame when they arrive, or deciding to be coldly silent to punish them. Finally comes the reaction exploding outward. You see, from waiting to getting angry is a long journey of consciousness. Clear seeing is the ability to recognize the gap between these links, especially the gap between sensation on the body and thought in the head. When your chest tightens, if you recognize it and breathe deeply, you won't rush to conclude that you are being slighted. You will cut the chain right there. You realize you have the right to choose to respond instead of reacting like a machine. Inside the openness of that gap lies your absolute freedom. To thoroughly understand how we make ourselves suffer, let's contemplate a profoundly deep teaching in Buddhist scripture, known as the Sutra of the Two Arrows. The Buddha taught that in the human journey, anyone, whether a sage or a common person, cannot avoid the first arrow. That is primal pain. It is the physical discomfort when the weather changes, the loss when a loved one departs, or the disappointment when work fails. This is clean pain, an inevitable part of the human experience that we cannot deny. But our tragedy lies in the fact that right after the first arrow strikes, we often personally shoot a second arrow into that very wound. This arrow is much more toxic. It is poisoned with inferences, complaints, and mental torment. We start asking, "Why me?" or believing that we are broken. Let's take a very ordinary example for you to see clearly. When a romantic relationship breaks down, the feeling of sadness, emptiness, and longing is the first arrow. That is the natural reaction of a heart that knows how to vibrate. But when you start lying in the dark and concluding that you are not good enough, that you are a failure, or that you don't deserve to be loved anymore, that is the second arrow. It is this arrow that turns a temporary sadness into a life sentence for your self-worth. One is actual pain, and the other is the mind's interpretation. The ability of clear seeing or practice is not an anesthetic that makes the first arrow disappear. We will still feel pain when injured, still know sadness when separated. But awakening gives us enough wisdom not to shoot the second arrow at ourselves. We keep the pain as a necessary lesson for growth, but refuse to turn that pain into a tragic story about who we are. When the second arrow is removed, true healing begins. My dear friend, not only do self-inflicted arrows hurt us, but this life also constantly blows strong winds that make our minds wobble ceaselessly. In Buddhism, they are called the 8 winds, or the 8 worldly conditions. These are pairs of opposing categories that everyone must face: gain and loss, praise and blame, pleasure and pain, fame and disrepute. We often spend our entire lives busily chasing favorable winds and fearfully running from adverse winds, only to turn ourselves into dry leaves blown aimlessly. Let's look at a very small but extremely common example in this era to see how easily we are blown away. Suppose today you pour all your heart into making a video or posting an article on social media. If you receive many views and compliments, your ego immediately swells. You feel valuable and talented. But conversely, if few people care that day, or worse, you receive a disparaging comment, suddenly you feel useless and inferior. Your entire long day is overshadowed just because of virtual numbers or strangers' opinions. Why are we so vulnerable? It is because we are trying to protect an image of ourselves that is actually built very loosely. The ego you are dying to preserve is just a patchwork of old memories, hidden fears, and others' expectations. We suffer because we are trying to protect something that doesn't truly exist as solidly as we imagine. Always remind yourself that those praises or blames, gains or losses are just erratic weather of heaven and earth. As for you, your true and peaceful essence is the deep blue sky. Weather always changes. My dear friend, there is an unconscious habit that is the source of so much mental suffering. We often believe that everything the mind tells us is the absolute truth. When a thought rings out that I'm not good enough, or everyone is judging me, we immediately believe it is the truth. We default to thinking we are those thoughts. But the Buddha taught that thoughts are actually just arising and ceasing phenomena, exactly like clouds drifting across the sky of consciousness. They appear not because they are your nature, but as a result of conditions like mood, old memories, or physical fatigue. When we identify ourselves with thoughts, we unintentionally paste heavy labels on our foreheads and imprison ourselves within them. The ability of clear seeing begins with changing how we name experiences. Instead of saying, "I am an anxious person," try gently saying, "The feeling of anxiety is present in me right now." Instead of saying, "I am furious," observe objectively that a wave of heat is rising in my body. This small change in language creates a huge safety distance. It separates you from the storm. Always remember this liberating truth. If you can observe a thought, then that thought cannot be you. You are the observing subject, and the thought is merely the observed object. You are the open and silent sky, while emotions and thoughts are just erratic weather passing through that will dissipate. For you to truly feel this freedom, I invite you to practice a small exercise the next time you face difficulty. When a negative thought like, "I am failing," crashes in, please stop for 3 seconds. Don't believe it immediately. Take a deep breath and rephrase that sentence in your head to, "Here is a thought that I am failing." Just adding the phrase, "Here is a thought," you will see its weight reduce by half. You are no longer a victim of the mind. You return to the position of a clear-sighted and tolerant observer. My dear friend, the journey of clear seeing is not something distant or mystical, reserved only for monks in deep forests. It lies right here, vividly present in your most ordinary daily gestures. To bring awakening into life, we don't need to change our living circumstances, but only need to change the quality of attention we give to it. Life doesn't need to become perfect for clarity to appear. You just need to stop long enough to recognize what is existing right before your eyes. Start with footsteps. Normally, when moving from the house to the car or walking in the park, your mind has often flown to the destination or is engrossed in work calculations. But today, try a different way. When walking, fully know that you are walking. Feel the solid contact of the soles of your feet with the ground. Feel the body weight moving rhythmically and the gentle breeze brushing over your skin. Don't walk just to arrive. Walk to truly be present with the life taking place. Then to daily meals. How long has it been since you truly tasted the full flavor of a dish without letting phone screens or worries intervene? When eating, just eat. Feel the texture of the food, the salty and sweet tastes soaking the tip of the tongue, and the movement of the jaw muscles when chewing. True nourishment comes not only from the nutrition in the food, but from the wholeness and gratitude you give to yourself in that moment. Even when working under stress, occasionally stop for a moment to observe your body. Are you unconsciously tensing your shoulders or frowning due to pressure? A conscious, deep breath at this time will help soften those tense muscle bundles. This is the core spirit of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, turning every ordinary activity into a vivid meditation school. When you are truly present, the most ordinary, tedious moments will bloom brilliantly like flowers, bringing you deep joy that no money can buy. But perhaps the greatest and harshest challenge of the ability of clear seeing lies not in peaceful sunny days, but when storms strike and our lives seem to shatter into pieces. That is when someone we love more than life itself decides to leave, when a plan we poured our heart into suddenly collapses, or when the future ahead suddenly becomes dark with no way out. In those dark moments, the mind often spirals deep into a cruel belief that one has failed completely, that one will never be whole again. But my dear friend, clear seeing in this moment is absolutely not about forcing yourself to endure better or to appear strong. It doesn't force you to force a smile and say you're fine while your heart is bleeding. Clear seeing is the courage to acknowledge the presence of the first arrow. Yes, this pain is real. This loss is real and it is heart-wrenching. But at the same time, wisdom prevents the second arrow from turning that painful event into a life sentence for your human value. You may be going through a breakdown, but that does not mean you are a broken or worthless person. Change your perspective on your tears. Pain is not a punishment for you. It is sacred proof that you have loved deeply, you have cared sincerely, and have dared to live fully with this life. Only a heart that knows how to vibrate knows pain, and that is the sign of a beautiful soul. Instead of rejecting or hating yourself for weakness, try closing your eyes and turning inward. Imagine you are embracing your hurting heart, just like a gentle mother hugging her sobbing child. That mother doesn't leave the child helpless, nor does she scold the child to stop immediately. She simply embraces, soothes, and is fully present with that pain with all gentleness. Treat yourself like that. Clarity does not have the ability to make the wound close immediately, but it has the power to prevent that wound from becoming the definition of who you are. You are much greater than your pain. My dear friend, closing today's journey, let's look further out, towards the panoramic picture of human life. This life, with all gains and losses, praise and blame, joy and sadness, is exactly like a vast ocean that never sleeps. There will always be waves crashing in. There are gentle waves sparkling under the sun. But there will also be fierce waves of storms. We cannot command the ocean to stop waving, nor can we absolutely control the weather of life. But true liberation lies not in the hopeless effort to flatten the sea surface. It lies in a profound transformation of perception. For so long, we have suffered because we mistakenly thought we were tiny, fragile waves, always afraid of shattering when hitting the shore. But awaken to realize this great truth. You were never those waves. You are always the ocean. You are the immense space encompassing everything. You are the profound depth where no surface storm can touch or damage. When you realize your ocean nature, you will have the ability to embrace every joy and sorrow without being drowned by them. Emotional waves come and go, rise and cease according to their laws, but the ocean is always there, intact, unchanging, and free. When you stop fighting the nature of water, peace will automatically be present. To anchor this wisdom into your consciousness, and to remind yourself every day of this infinite inner strength, I invite you to leave a comment below this video. I am the ocean, not the waves. Live with that open and tolerant mindset, and you will see how gentle life suddenly becomes.